I'm going to be talking from a big study that we did in 9 states to understand the teaching community in India and the teaching workforce in India. I'd like to really start with a very interesting finding for us that from 2000 onwards, the growth rate of increase in the teacher workforce was much higher than the growth rate of students, which basically meant that we had there was such a huge shortage of teachers that many more teachers were appointed after 2000. Maybe it has a lot to do with Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, which came into the country in 2001 and really started being implemented as separately from DPEP from 2003. Now, what is interesting is that when you talk about teachers, that if you look at any policy of Government of India, there is no mention of contract teachers. But when you look at Government of India data, you will find a lot of contract teachers. So the notion of contract teachers or teachers whom they tried to call para-teachers at one point of time actually crept into the system without any policy level sanction. Whether you take the 1976 policy, or whether you take the 1986 policy, there is no mention of para-teachers or there is no mention of contract teachers. But it is quite interesting that most of the states, for example, in a place like Jharkhand, 50% of all teachers are contract teachers. The Jharkhand government has completely stopped hiring regular teachers. Karnataka and Tamil Nadu is the other extreme. They have never really had many contract teachers. But Madhya Pradesh, at all levels, you've had contract teachers, but now they have changed the system. We'll come back to that later. But whether it is Odisha, whether it is Punjab, whether it's Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, they all had contract teachers. But one positive trend is that in 2013, because of a High Court judgment, Rajasthan government had to remove all their contract teachers because the Rajasthan High Court upheld that equal pay for equal work, so therefore contract teachers ceased to exist in Rajasthan. So it's only through the intervention of the courts that we were able to change the system. But it's very interesting, India has never really had a policy on this. So it's happy that the trend of contract teachers in India is actually gradually reversing. And that brings me to who can become a teacher in India. You would be surprised that till very recently, every state government could do what they want and employ whomever they want. There was a time in Bihar where, I think it was the 1990s, where even a 10th class failed child, a boy or girl, could become a primary school teacher. There were no strict norms. When DPP came into force in 1994-95, they said we need norms for regular teachers, but for contract and para teachers, you don't need any norms. So the idea then was to get as cheap teachers as possible so that we could cater to the expanding school system. The demand for teachers was so high that we went on expanding the number of teachers regardless. But I must say that it is only after 2011, after the Right to Education Act, that the eligibility criteria is now very strict, that everyone cannot become a teacher. You need 12 years of school education, which means you should be 12th class pass with a diploma in education to become a primary school teacher. The minute you go to upper primary, you need to have a graduation and a diploma would be fine. But anything beyond, or a B.Ed. But for secondary and post-secondary, which is higher secondary as we call it, you need to have a postgraduate degree and a B.Ed degree. And in fact, NCTE revised the guidelines for pre-service teacher requirements and even the syllabus for pre-service teacher education only after 2011. So the NCTE revised its guidelines in 2014. And why did it take such a long time? We have been independent in India for a long time, from 1947. But somehow we thought anybody can become a teacher. And one of the reasons why our education system is so bad, or sad, should I say, is because we have not paid attention to teachers. Maybe all of you may like to look at what countries like Finland or countries like Holland or countries like Singapore and even China has done to ensure that only qualified and people with a certain basic level of understanding become teachers. But in India, we neglected it from 1947 till 2011. I mean, that's a long time to neglect the teaching profession. Now, what is about recruitment? You go anywhere in the world, there are proper norms for recruitment. There are policies for recruitment. You would be surprised that with the exception of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, none of the states that we looked at had any teacher recruitment policy. As that every year the government is to issue a government order. So you have a situation where most of these states do not even have a systematic way of calculating how many teachers you need. How many teachers we need in primary, how many teachers we need in upper primary, how many later. If they can't calculate that, how are they supposed to know how many maths teachers you need and how many science teachers you need and how many Sanskrit teachers you need? So this has been a huge issue. And this has been one of the reasons why our teaching community has been so unhappy. That you don't have any norms of who can get in till very recently. You had no uniform norms for recruitment. And why did Karnataka and Tamil Nadu get it? It was because of the proactive nature of those two state governments who felt that they needed to have a policy which does not change every year. Because in some states, I don't want to name the states, that 1 year they will say age limit is 45. 1 year they will say age limit is 32. And they will even change the qualifications required for teacher recruitment. And we have seen in the newspapers in the last at least 10 years, the number of scandals all across India on teacher recruitment. That it was a highly politicized, a highly political enterprise. So politics and teacher recruitment went very close together. Tamil Nadu, it's interesting. The person who first started systematizing teacher recruitment was during MGR's time. That was a long time ago. And it was only in Karnataka it happened slightly later. But both states now have a very strict policy that they follow, and they have teacher recruitment boards which conducts examinations. And they don't only go by what marks that people got in various schools, but it's now that NCTE has introduced the National Eligibility Test, that is NET, that is the PET and NET and things like that. Now I'd like to go into another very important aspect of teacher recruitment, that the headmaster of a school has no say in the teacher she or he gets. Which means if a school desperately needs 2 maths teachers and 1 chemistry teacher, they have no way they can manage to get that. And that is really a very sad commentary on our system, because teachers are allocated by the state or the district, with the exception again of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. In Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, they have a computerized counseling system like the way we have for IIT entrance. And it is that computerized counseling system which tries to match the needs of the school and the teachers. So maybe at some time you may want to look at why these two states are so different from the rest. Now I'm coming to teacher deployment. See, teacher deployment is how teachers are transferred. Now, teachers belong to different cadres. Some teachers belong to a district cadre. Some teachers belong to a state cadre. Some teachers belong to a divisional cadre. Division could be a combination of 4 or 5 districts. So, depending on who they are and which cadre they belong to, teachers are then deployed. Even here, there is a huge variation. Karnataka and Tamil Nadu have a teacher transfer and deployment policy, which is policy driven, which is systematic, transparent, and computerized. Where all the vacancies are up on the computer at every district office, all the teachers who are asked for transfers are posting, and then the two are matched. And the teachers come one by one depending on the merit list, what they get in the entrance examination. Madhya Pradesh and Odisha governments are somewhere in between. They also have very clearly spelt out teacher appointment and transfer processes. But there is no computerized counseling there as yet. I'm told Madhya Pradesh and Odisha are planning to, they had sent officers when we were doing this study to understand the Karnataka system, and they may have introduced it by now. Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Mizoram, and Rajasthan. These really do not have any systematic policy. The norms change from year to year. Rajasthan apparently is going to announce a policy. They said they were going to announce it in 2015, but as far as I know, the policy is not yet, it's been formulated, but it has not yet been implemented. So what does it mean? That teacher transfers and teacher postings are political. During the fieldwork of another project in 2009, I've been working on teachers since 2000. I was doing a project in 2008 or 9, August, when the schools had just reopened. 25,000 teachers in Rajasthan were transferred in one government order. And they were all got an informal message that if they needed to change their transfer, if they needed to cancel their transfer, they have to meet their local MLA. So I think political patronage and teacher transfers and teacher postings and teacher deployment are very closely linked. And this is one of the reasons why many of these states have not done that. Just a footnote. All of you know that the returning officers, the election officers during all elections are school teachers, government school teachers. So there is a very close nexus between political parties and teachers. There was a time when we were doing a study in Bihar, when the then education secretary, in fact, jokingly said, and he pulled out a register and showed it, that by the seniority list, I can tell you who was in power in the state, who was the chief minister of the state, which means even appointments were based on caste, community considerations. So therefore, teacher deployment has been a highly politicized subject. And interestingly, nobody bothered to study these things in detail. There's another very interesting phenomena that we came across in many states, which is called proxy teachers. I will come to that a little later on salary after this point. As you know, teacher salaries after 5th pay commission and 6th pay commission has been quite high. In fact, a newly recruited teacher can get even 40,000 as the first salary. And by the time they retire after 25 years, after 25 years, they could even get a salary of 1.25 lakhs a month. So which basically says that teachers in India are fairly well paid. But what is interesting is that because of high salaries of teachers, the phenomena of proxy teachers is quickly catching up. Which means if I am appointed as a teacher, If I get 50,000 rupees a month for my qualifications because I have a graduation and I have a post-graduation and a B.Ed and I'm a secondary school teacher, I can call somebody, pay them 20,000 and say, you go and teach on my place and I can just stay in the city. And this proxy teacher phenomena we came across in almost all the states. But most states would not admit it. It was much less in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu for other reasons. There was once a very interesting study which was done linking infrastructure development with teacher postings. So maybe the infrastructure is good that people can actually take buses and go to the school and come back. And also the community is very active in these states. Suppose you have a proxy teacher, they probably will not tolerate it. But in many states, for instance, in Mizoram, they actually have a word for it. They call them Aikya. And Jharkhand, it was absolutely, almost all the villages we went to said that proxy teachers is the norm. We've heard about it in UP, but the problem is you cannot really have any proof. So there is another big issue which the teachers themselves say is a problem, especially in rural remote schools. So basically what we're trying to say is that teacher salaries in India is no longer bad. Teacher salaries are quite comparable to the salary of people within the civil service, government services. They get almost similar. It's not very low. But what is more interesting is that in all the states, it is electronic transfer and they get their salary on the first of the month. So no headmaster and nobody has to sign it. So all states have now introduced electronic transfer, which directly happens from either the district headquarters of the treasury or the state headquarters, depending on the system they have. But there is a huge gap between the salaries of regular teachers and contract teachers. Now I'd like to move on to another very important issue, is that we will think that India, which has been the leader of IT in the world, should have a good teacher MIS system. We always thought we would have, but you would be surprised. Except for Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, the states do not have a MIS system which can marry both their seniority and some basic personal details and their salary and other things. But none of the states have included training and qualifications in that MIS. So the MIS was developed for salary purposes. So all states have MIS for salary. When you were appointed, when you were, what increment is due when. But only Karnataka and Tamil Nadu has a little more information. I'm told now Bihar and a few states are developing it, but we do not know. But given that we have such a tight MIS system, in many other areas in India, we have the best census and one of the best census in the world. Our NSSO is one of the best in the world. I don't understand why we have not been able to do it. So we asked teachers as to why don't you think there is not a foolproof MIS system? MIS system that will tell you things like what trainings have you had, where were you posted, how many rural postings, how many urban postings. They said, then when you have this information in a transparent manner, then political interference is not possible in transfers and postings. So this is a very sad commentary. When we talk about one of the reasons why our Indian education system is in the way state it is also because the teachers are very much at the mercy of a lot of political people who are around them. Whether it is for transfer, whether it's for posting, whether it's for increment, whether it is to make sure that you get your dues, for everything they need to have an influence. Now, we expect all schools to have school leaders and headmasters. We have a vacancy rate all India in the primary schools of 45% of schools don't have a headmaster or a principal. And at the upper primary level, 46% of schools do not have a headmaster. It is slightly better at the secondary level. Maybe 20 to 25% don't have it. But it is really shocking that how are you going to manage a school? When I talked about poverty, high poverty schools, this is an important issue. You need to have a headmaster or a headmistress or a principal to manage the school. And most of the schools that don't have these school leaders are in rural areas, are the poorer schools, are the high poverty schools. But even where there are leaders, in India we don't give them any autonomy. You look at any European country, you look at even the American system, you look at the Chinese system, the school principal has a lot of powers. The school principal can actually ensure that the teachers come on time, the teachers teach, the school principal can actually give a recommendation for higher increment, all these things they can do. But in India, the school leaders have limited powers. They have absolutely no powers. That's why the principal cannot make sure that a teacher comes regularly. Or if a teacher who's doing exceptional work, for instance, there are lots and lots of teachers. My own sense is 50% of teachers are fairly dedicated. And there's nobody to recommend that they should get more increment. But on the other hand, everybody gets the same increment, whether you work, whether you don't work, whether you're absent, whether you're present, and the school principal has no powers in that manner. Another very interesting aspect of India is that anybody who joins in a new profession, you want some professional growth. I don't want to remain a researcher all my life. I would like to go from a research assistant to a lecturer to a professor to whatever it is. It's a natural human desire to move. But in the teaching community, all promotions are strictly on seniority. A primary school teacher has to retire as a primary school teacher. An upper primary school teacher has to retire as an upper primary school teacher. It's only the secondary school teacher can become a district education officer or a block education officer or whatever. But again, here are some amazing exceptions. Tamil Nadu has a system whereby teachers are given leave and they're given encouragement to upgrade their educational qualification. So a primary school teacher with class 12 and a diploma can do a 3-year BA or BSc course, can do a B.Ed and move from being a primary school teacher to a upper primary teacher. The same person can then take further educational qualifications and move further. And the same person can, in fact, when we were doing the study, the head of the district state SSA, was a person who started his career as a primary school teacher, and through correspondence course and through local contact classes and things like that, he's now in a position. So Tamil Nadu is one of the few states which actually allows you a pathway, because 25% of all recruitment at higher levels other than elementary is reserved for teachers who upgrade their educational qualifications and go up. So maybe that is one of the reasons why teachers are more motivated. Karnataka has some kind of system, but nothing so systematic. But again, you will be surprised. This started again in Tamil Nadu during MGR's time. That was a long time ago. Another very important area where we did a lot of study to find out, is there a teacher appraisal mechanism? We found none. There is no mechanism whereby there could be an objective appraisal of a teacher, so that the teachers who are good are rewarded, get some kind of incentives, not necessarily monetary. They can get rewarded in other ways, but that is not to be. MHRD told us that they've created a format, they said they created a format in 2008 or 9, but I didn't see it operational in any state. There's another very interesting thing that is happening in India, maybe because of the RTI Act, Right to Information Act. As a result of that, many states have actually streamlined the grievance redressal mechanism, because teachers were constantly using the right to information to get information as to what is happening to their case. So many states, there are two mechanisms that are available. One is a non-statutory mechanism, which is offered where grievance redressal is offered by the state educational officers, which means every Saturday, first Saturday of the month, there would be a group of senior officers who will sit at the block level, and teachers can come with their grievances. And the grievances which can be solved at that level can be solved. Similarly, there would be a one day of the month, it will be and the next Saturday would be at the district level. If the teachers are not satisfied with what happens at the block, they can go to the district. If they're not satisfied at the district, they can go to the state level, which happens once a month. So for 3 Saturdays, they have a grievance redressal mechanisms. Many states have this now. And I'm told, we saw it functioning quite well in Orissa. And it was quite well. In fact, we sat through one of those, which was quite interesting. But also we did an analysis of cases, maybe of last 5 years, what kind of cases. Majority of the cases with the teachers that filed in court had to do with service benefits, recruitment, transfer, etc. Regularization of appointment. In fact, most of the cases were there. But what is interesting is that in 33% of the cases, most of the courts ruled in favor of the government, but in majority of the cases, all the cases were actually the judgments are given in favor of the teachers. So obviously, teacher grievances is a huge issue. So these are the basic issues that we covered in the teacher study, from recruitment to transfer to posting to everything. I have a few takeaway lessons from this study, which I think is what are the things that are urgently needed in India? First, we need to streamline teacher recruitment, teacher deployment, and teacher transfer policies. It needs to become really streamlined and transparent. That means it will really remove a huge burden which the teachers carry. One of the main reasons why teachers go and make friends with political leaders, influential leaders, is because they need their support for everything. But once there is a transparent mechanism, this will not happen. 2, we need to strengthen the institution of the headmaster, headmistress, and principals, and give them more powers, not just responsibilities. We need to give them a lot more powers. 3rd, which in fact teachers told us, there is no induction program for teachers. So we need to have a systematic induction program for teachers. And 4, what the teachers said, we want a booklet which gives us our roles, our responsibilities, and our rights and our entitlement. And don't keep changing it every year. So these are the 4 takeaways for me from this big study.